SnapFlash fam, Botswana just made the world stop and listen. Vice President and Finance Minister Ndaba Gaolathe took center stage at George Washington University, electrifying the Future of Finance and Trade in Africa 2.0 conference with a message the world couldn't ignore. Africa's time isn't coming, it's already here. What happens when a leader returns to his alma mater? Not to reminisce, but to rewrite history. Stay tuned, because Gaolathe didn't just make a speech, he sparked a movement. Like, share, and subscribe if you believe Africa is ready to lead the world. From the same university where he once studied economics and mathematics, Gaolathe painted a vision of a Botswana and a continent ready to lead. Here, I learned that finance isn't just numbers, it's about justice, leadership, and the future, he reflected. But this wasn't nostalgia, it was a declaration of destiny. Gaolathe reminded the audience that Africa's history is rich with trade, innovation, and resilience. From the ancient Saharan caravans to the libraries of Timbuktu, we're not inventing a new Africa, we're remembering who we've always been, he said, and the crowd felt it.
It was here as a student in mathematics and economics, a student of great professors, Professor Hugh Courtney, Professor Yaita, Professor Utes. It was here that I first grappled with the elegant logic of numbers and the unpredictable rhythms of markets. And in these halls, I encountered not just theories of development and frameworks of finance, but the moral responsibility of leadership, the architecture of justice, and the unyielding value of freedom. I return not just as an alumnus, but as a son of Africa, bearing a vision rooted in the soil of Botswana, not only rooted in the soil of Botswana, but one reaching towards the soul of our shared humanity. So we gather this evening at a time of tectonic shifts in the global economic order. Trade blocs are fracturing. Nationalism is resurgent. Many countries are returning and retreating from long-held alliances and multilateral pacts, turning inward, as though the walls we build might protect us from the winds of change. Yet in Africa, a different rhythm echoes. At this precise moment, as others pull apart, we are coming together as Africa. The African Continental Free Trade Area is not just a policy instrument. It is the boldest expression of African unity since the founding of the Organization of African Unity. It embodies a belief that our futures are bound together, not by force or fortune, but by design, by destiny, and by deliberate cooperation and collaboration. Africa has always traded not merely goods from ideas, but values and technologies. From the gold and the manuscripts of Timbuktu to the Swahili Coast Indian Ocean networks, to the caravans across the Sahara, ours has never been a continent of silence or solitude. Long before the ink of modern trade agreements dried, Africa was already a continent of integration. Caravans crossed the Sahara in a choreography of trust and knowledge, moving gold from the forests of Ghana to the courts of Cairo, and returning with books, salt, and wisdom. These, ladies and gentlemen, were not isolated kingdoms. They were nations in conversation. With the Africa Free Trade Agreement, we are not just inventing a new Africa. We are simply remembering who we are and who we have always been. And because the wisdom of Africa's trade was never merely an exchange, it was in the relationships, in consensus building, in balance and reciprocity. We did not build markets for profit alone, but for harmony and resilience. This is the spirit we must revive, not to mimic the world's mistakes, but to reimagine trade as a tool to bring out the best in us, a tool for justice, a tool for dignity, a tool for development. We must see finance and trade not as neutral flows of capital and commodities, but as levers to redesign our society. The Africa we are building should be, will be, an Africa that is digitally integrated. Payments and logistics leap across borders with the speed of thought. A green and regenerative Africa where carbon is not an externality but part of our trade negotiations. An Africa where youth, or rather an Africa that is youth-powered, where trade creates jobs not only in mining and agriculture, but in AI, biotech, and digital artistry. An Africa that is women-led and inclusive. For no economy is just when it excludes half its people from shaping its future. And under the Africa Free Trade Agreement, Africa is writing the rules of a new civilization, one that values fairness over dominance, cooperation over cohesion. And this is where Botswana steps forward, not in arrogance, but in conviction. Botswana, under this new government, we call it the government of the new Botswana, is reimagining itself not as a landlocked state, but as a land-linked catalyst. Our borders are not barriers, but bridges. Our institutions are not remnants of the past, but instruments of and for the future. We are laying the groundwork for sovereign wealth, driven by our collective knowledge and collective wisdom. We need to invest in blockchain-backed logistics. We need to invest in cross-border financial technologies. We need trade corridors that marry digital infrastructure with ecological sustainability. Our vision is rooted in reality, but illuminated by imagination. We envision a Botswana that leads in carbon-neutral trade, a country that becomes the logistics capital, the logistics hub, not only of Southern Africa, but of Africa, a fintech sandbox for continental integration. We are spearheading reforms in public procurement and capital markets and digital identity to ensure that our systems speak the language of tomorrow. We are working toward a new fiscal philosophy, one where the state is not just a regulator, but a collaborator with private enterprise and civil society. Under this vision, we shall re-anchor our trade policy away from extraction and into transformation. Diamonds will no longer just shine in Antwerp. They will create jobs in Gaborone. Our beef will not just feed the world. It will be branded with integrity and traceability. And our indigenous knowledge will inform the creation of African intellectual property rights. We are crafting trade policy with the same care our elders built homesteads, with foresight, with rootedness, with respect for the unseen. And we are anchoring our finance not in the speculative excesses that have hurt the world, but in productive investments, climate resilience, and inclusive entrepreneurship. To the young economists, to the trade lawyers, to the tech entrepreneurs, to the policy makers and dreamers listening here and across the Atlantic, I urge you, do not inherit the cynicism of yesterday. Dare to imagine an Africa whose exports are no longer dug from the ground, but drawn from the genius of her people. A Botswana whose influence is not measured in GDP per capita alone, but in the ideas that challenge old hierarchies and inspire new harmonies. The future of finance and trade in Africa is not a destination, it is a design. And the architect must be you.
At a time when global systems are faltering, Gaolathe's message was thunderous. Africa isn't waiting for a seat at the table, it's building its own. And Botswana is leading the charge, with unity, innovation, and an unstoppable spirit. If you believe the future belongs to a bold, united Africa, smash that like button, share this vision, and keep it locked on SnapFlash. The future isn't waiting, and neither should we. And as always, keep questioning and stay informed.
Fearless.